Zino Nicaragua proudly sponsors Half-Wheel's PCA 2025 coverage. Light, creamy with Nicaraguan pepper. Enjoy the best value in cigars today. Zino Nicaragua.
Hi, everyone. My name is Charlie Minato, and I'm back here in Dallas, Texas. Across the table from me is Brooks Whittington, who is... It appears like you are blowing smoke in my face. You're not actually doing so, but it's running across the camera lens and making it look very rude of you.
I am not rude. I am... normally,
should get a customer satisfaction survey from the servers in New Orleans.
I would say, hey, I'm always nice to servers. I used to be one, back in the day. Used to wait tables.
Dear, I had...
Guess what place I used to work, or what used to work at? Just give me a guess. You know what? It's probably out of business. You probably never went to one because it was out of business before you were born.
Sizzler?
Almost.
Bennigan's?
No.
I'm out of white people guesses.
White people. That'd be Ryan's Steakhouse, which you may or may not have ever heard of. Sorry, yeah, wasn't great.
Cole,
Did you ever work as a waiter?
I did not. Did you ever see the movie Waiting?
I did not, but I'm going to assume it's not about waiters.
It is about waiters.
It's not some existential crisis movie.
No, it's a good reminder of why you should be nice to your servers.
Indeed, because they go off and kill people if you're not, or
well, no,
is it like a murder thing?
More like
track you down.
Liquids and hair and food and
always be nice to your waiters. Always tip well.
Other things. All right. So we are back from New Orleans, back from the 2025 PCA Convention and Trade Show. We saw many of you. There's not that many of you watching right now. So we saw all of you watching, I guess, or numerically speaking. We saw a lot of you. A lot of you had very nice things to say about Half-Wheel, and I feel like I confidently can speak for the rest of our team here and say that very appreciative of all those words. A lot of you also pointed out, especially probably when interacting with me, it looks like you're quite busy. We were quite busy. We're trying to cover as many booths as we can. And if you've been reading the site, didn't go to New Orleans or did go to New Orleans, you'll see why we tried to cover as many booths as we can. We have published not even half of the ones that we covered. So a lot more left to do here at Half-Wheel, although I am well over halfway done in terms of the numerical number of booths, though LA Blue and SC DuPont loom large. So we'll continue posting them. Our sort of internal plan is that we hopefully are done with them by the end of next weekend, but we'll see. And if you're wondering, as I'm sure so many of you are, not what we're doing today, but what cigars are we smoking? Brooks, I have no idea. You're smoking an unbanded cigar over there.
You like it?
I would like to see you try to smoke that thing to the end before we finish this live show.
I'm not quite as I'm not quite as slow as you are, but
there's no way that you're finishing that cigar.
This is a 10 Aniversario from Foundation Cigar Company, unbanded, that Nick gave me while I was covering the booth, and I wanted to try it out. Seemed like it had some good. It's burning great. It's great. Yeah, very enjoyable. What about you, buddy?
I'm smoking a Zino Platinum Collector's Edition. These are years ago when UR New York was like the brand ambassador for Zino Platinum. These were cigars where they would make basically like custom lids for the boxes as a single store release. The cigars were all the same, but I think they probably released like 30 different packaging versions of these cigars. And Davidoff is in case you have missed it, Zino Nicaragua is the official sponsor of our 2025 PCA Convention and Trade Show coverage. And so I figured I might as well smoke a cigar from the people paying the bills here.
Oh, I figure I should have done one. Thanks.
It's fine. You could send an invoice to Foundation.
I'll do that.
You're like, hey, here's an invoice for
Email
$15.
Nick.
Anyways, this cigar is probably about 10 years old, something like that. And cold draw, a lot of grape juice, grape soda notes on it. Very sweet.
Like actual grape juice or like the cheap?
No, the cheap stuff, the cheap imitation. So yeah, but I don't know. Curious to light it up and get going. So for those of you wondering, today's show not going to count towards the contest. We have 4 of them currently running. 3 of them are going to come to an end on Sunday night. So enjoy your Easter celebrations or whatever you're doing this Sunday, and leave some comments on the site. They are very specific. You'll have to go to the contest page and see. But basically, if you leave a comment on any of the booth posts that we wrote from the first 3 days of the show, so that would be April 12th, April 13th, April 14th, there is a different contest corresponding with that. Leave a comment in the post. We will select a comment or a post at random and then a comment within the post at random. So you have roughly like, I don't know, eight posts per day that you need to leave a comment on. That's for the Avo contest, for this Camacho contest, as well as for this Zeno Nicaragua contest. All the prizes are here in Dallas, so we'll ship them out to you, assuming that you live or can provide an address in the continental United States of America and are at least 21 years old, as well as some other terms and conditions you can read at halfwheel.com. Then there is the big prize, which is not featured here, apparently, and that is the Davidoff Humidor. It's on the homepage of the site, so you can check it out. And for that prize, you can leave a comment on any of the booth coverage. We're going to run that through the end of next week, so you'll have at least 100, but probably closer to 150 posts. So get your keyboard ready, leave some comments, and again, we will select one of the posts at random, and within the post, we will then select one of the comments at random. The grand prize is something like $3,000 worth of stuff from Davidoff. There's a Davidoff Humidor, Davidoff branded humidor, Winston Churchill humidor, as well as I think like an 8-pack of Davidoff Winston Churchill cigars.
That's a lot of humidors.
Well, no, it's one humidor.
Oh,
I think there's maybe another. I think the Camacho also includes a humidor. Well, the Avo has like a travel case, but no, it's one like $2,700 humidor. It's Davidoff. It's not meant to be affordable. But Zeno Nicaragua meant to be affordable.
That was a cool ashtray. The Zeno ashtray is pretty cool.
All right, before we get started, I guess we can do this now. Like we can go through these and then we'll sort of talk about the show broadly. So we asked some questions last year, a year ago, when we wrapped up the PCA 2024 show, and we had some basic questions to sort of talk about. And I figured we could bring some of them back today because they're not necessarily going to be covered in the prediction show. So we'll run through these. Then we'll have some like sort of broad recap-y topics. I don't want to go too far in depth because at some point I'm going to have to produce our annual big half-wheel written recap, and I don't want to steal all of the topics for that. I also haven't thought much about it yet, so we'll go brief on that, and then we will get to the prediction show, which I think is what we're all kind of waiting for. And Brooks and I are particularly interested because the loser of the prediction show has to review the next 7x70, which might be an Oliva and not an Aganorsa.
And just to be clear, you don't know what who the winner is yet.
No, I mean, I'm aware of who won some of the questions, but I have not tallied them up, and I think there are a couple of questions that we still have to resolve. So, Brooks.
Yes.
What new cigar, I take it, did you hear the most about during the trade show?
That would be the Autor Fuente 90th.
Don Carlos
90th, yes. Especially after your story went up. Because people, I don't believe there was much information out there before the story went up. And as soon as the story went up, people were talking about it. I heard at least 4 people talk about it to me specifically. Hey, I saw that story. Very cool. 2 wrappers.
All 4 of our readers.
2 different wrappers on it. Add 1 wrapper and then age the cigar for a year, and then add another wrapper and age the cigar for another year, if I'm remembering correctly. And very, very interesting release. You actually smoked this, didn't you?
I did.
That's pretty awesome. So, yeah, that's what a lot of people were talking about, that one. There's a lot of stuff in the Fuente booth to talk about, but that one was definitely the one that most people that I talked to asked me about. What about you?
Well, I wanted to talk about this because I actually smoked. This is one of 2 cigars I smoked in New Orleans. Do you know how many cigars you lit up in New Orleans?
Lit up or smoked?
Lit up.
Probably 6 total.
Yeah, I only lit up 2. I smoked both of them more or less down
to the end.
I smoked this one till the end, certainly, and smoked the is it Bandolero?
The new one, the premium?
No. I was the cigar we bought on Wednesday night.
Oh, at the store, at the Cuban Creations, right?
Yeah.
Great store, by the way, in New Orleans.
But yeah, I smoked that cigar, and then I smoked this one on Thursday night, and this is the first cigar I smoked since last Thursday.
Awesome.
Like all
PCA
attendees.
How was the Fuente?
It was very good. I thought it to be a lot sweeter than Don Carlos typically is, the regular Don Carlos. So Brooks got the basic outline right here. From what I've been told, The cigar starts out its life as a regular Don Carlos. It is the same exact blend. It is aged the same way, which means they roll the cigar, they age it for a year. It's aged at the same relative humidity and temperatures, which I was very curious to learn about this process. And then they take the cigars out. Normally, this is where the cigars would go to the packaging department, get bands, and then shipped to their warehouses and then eventually to the stores. But instead, these cigars go back to the rolling floor. I was curious to know, how do they dampen the cigars, any of that stuff? And I'm guessing they probably spray them a little bit at that point just to make sure the wrapper's going to go on smoothly, but maybe not even. And they put a Corojo wrapper on it that's grown at Chateau de la Fuente. Now, Carlos Fuente Jr., Carlito as he's known, I find, thinking about this now, I find a lot of the decisions that were made about that story to be interesting, that this was the one new release that Fuente really wanted it to talk about in terms of pricing and vitolas. The Fuente had 3 other new lines, or sort of new lines, come out. There's a new Añejo. There is the Black Pink that was shown off. The box was shown off last year. This we got to see the cigars.
Nice.
And then there is also another Don Carlos, the Sangre de Toro. With Black Pink, they at least disclosed that there will be 4 vitolas and the names of them, and 3 of them are basically just the Hemingway vitolas again. And then there's a new one. But with Sangre de Toro and with the new Añejo, Fuente didn't talk at all about vitolas, let alone about pricing. And they certainly didn't talk about pricing for Black Pink. They didn't take orders for any of these 4 lines. And yet, a company that does not like to talk about any of these things normally went out of its way to tell me that these cigars are $13. They're coming in this 5 3/4 by what we believe to be 47 ring gauge size, and they're going to come in these 90 count boxes. I find it interesting that was very clearly an explicit decision to talk about that, because I did ask about pricing and other things for the other ones, and it was clear that they didn't necessarily want to share that.
Talk about that.
Yeah, but they did here. And I think one of the reasons why they did here is because they really want to make it clear that Carlos Fuente Sr., who passed away nearly a decade ago, would not be okay with the $50, $100 cigars of today. He would probably find $13 to be a bit outrageous for a cigar, and he would want this to be a cigar that kind of any cigar smoker that wanted to be able to smoke it could smoke it and could afford it without it breaking the bank. And so I think that that's why they did it. But it's still interesting that this was the one that they chose to. I don't know if that means the other 3 lines are all going to be quite expensive, but an interesting choice. The story behind this, I guess, and we have a great video from Carlito on Half Wheel where he talks about it. But one day he was smoking a Don Carlos, and he just decided to put a Corojo wrapper on it. As this is a common way for people to test new tobacco, is they'll have a sort of test cigar. They'll have a cigar they're smoking, usually a pretty neutral cigar, and then a lot of times, especially to test the combustion and how the wrapper burns, one of the things you do is you just take the tobacco and you just overlay it on a cigar that's currently already going, and you can watch the cigar, the wrapper burn. And so he did that, and he said that he wanted to do it because the original Don Carlos, which I was unaware of, was not made with a Cameroon wrapper. It was originally made with a Nicaraguan Corojo wrapper that was grown in Jalapa by the Oliva tobacco family. And it only lasted for a couple years. If you have some of them, please contact Half Wheel. We'd love to review them for Holy Grail Week. But Fuente only had this for a couple years because it was introduced in 1976, and if my memory serves correct, and in 1979, the Fuente factory in Nicaragua burned down during the revolution. And then after that, the family relocated ultimately to the Dominican Republic, opened up a new factory a year or 2 later, and then had a African Cameroon wrapper, which is what we know Don Carlos to be, and the reason why I'm such a fan of Don Carlos. So an interesting story. Again, I found it to be a little bit sweeter than the typical Don Carlos, but I only smoked 1 cigar, and I am curious to see what the production sort of, when it hits shelves, version looks like. I'm also curious to see, I've requested some test samples for them to do it in reverse. So for them to put the Corojo wrapper on, age it for a year, and then put the Cameroon wrapper on, age it for a year. So in 2027, I'll get back to you on that.
I was a little surprised, I have to be honest, when I heard about the price especially. That's a lot of extra work for a cigar that costs only $13 MSRP, and aging as well. So I was a little surprised. I thought it'd be at least $15. So
again, I think it's a Carlos Fuente Sr. thing of, like, you know, I think he would be appalled at $13, but certainly at 30, he'd have some issues.
Or 100. All right.
So on my end, the cigar that I heard the most about, I heard this probably from 4 people, which is all that it takes to qualify for this. This is the new Lullusion Singolare. I'm not going to try to butcher the actual name of it. It is, from what I've been told, albeit not from Dion Giolito, though he apparently saw the article and did not say that it was wrong. So we'll continue to go with this. But what I was told is that it is the exact same internal blend as the original Singolare, the regular Singolare that's sold today, but with a Mexican wrapper on it. And I heard from a couple of people, or I think we're going with 4 people that smoked this. And a couple of them in particular said, like, it is remarkable how different of a cigar this is with just the wrapper change on it. I don't really want to get into the debate of how much a percentage the wrapper provides the flavor, because
90%.
I think 90% is always the answer. And I think that debate is a bit pointless because of how many variables there are. But it is a major, like, if you had to change one leaf in a cigar, I imagine the wrapper would have the largest of the impacts. And so this is the new Singolare. I have not smoked it, and I'm certainly curious to smoke it. I've mentioned this on previous shows that Dion Giolito and his sort of reputation, based on all of the excellent cigars that he has produced over his career, means that I will always want to try a new cigar from Lullusion, even if, and this certainly is not qualifies, but even if on paper the cigar is not something that would look to be that appealing to me based on the blend or the size or the factory, because it's Dion, I'm always going to try it. And this certainly, the first cigar he released with the Mexican San Andreas wrapper, I loved the shit out of. You remember what that was?
I do not.
Rex.
But tell me what it was. What?
Rex,
the bundle cigar that he made for one of the patrons at his store, correct?
Not in a bundle, but yes.
Did it come out in a bundle first?
I don't think
Thought
so.
it did. Very small cigar. Loved it.
Cab's at 50.
Loved it.
Sorry, I'm making sure that that's right. Or the chat
It was a while ago.
could correct. We have the...
We still have that huge thing, don't we, of his?
we do.
We need to smoke some cigars out of that.
It's full. We also have that box of Rex that I smoked the shit of, sitting on top of the Pendergrass humidor. Anyway, so the
None
new
left, though.
the new Singolare.
None left.
Yeah, no. I think there may be 1 or 2 left, but not in that box. The new Singolare, certainly, again, there was not for me at least, I didn't find there was like a singular, there have been some shows where there's like a singular cigar that there's just like everyone is talking about. Did not find that to be the case this year. Now, slightly different question. What cigar are you most interested in trying? Brooks, you want to go first here?
Yeah, so one of my booths was Dunbarton, Tobacco and Trust. And while I was talking to Steve Saka, he mentioned the
Flex.
10th Jubilee, which
I didn't get to talk to Saka.
okay.
No, I saw him on the sidewalk one day. He was wearing sunglasses.
Sure wasn't me?
No, but I did. Kyle was with us, and I was like, that's Brooks' dad.
If you're wondering, the total number of people who mistook me for Saka was 5 during the entire show.
That was a huge
Was
ramp
that one
down.
of the...
No, it wasn't one of the questions, because it was at like 4, I think, on Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really slowed down.
So to get back to my question, yes, the 10th Jubilee. Saka told me that this is a very different release. I haven't tried it yet. Told me that it's a very different release from his normal stuff. Very not mild necessarily, but definitely on the milder side compared to his normal releases. He says it's a very different profile, and that he's very interested to see how people react to it. I got the impression he thought that it would not be as well loved as some of his other releases.
Man, he loves that marketing trope.
He loves it.
He loves the "you're gonna hate this" or "you're an idiot for buying it" or "no one should spend this much money on my products."
He does love that.
Is that a 109 style cap there?
I do not believe that it is.
Kind of looks like it from the picture. Anyways, yeah, I'm definitely curious in trying that one. I would say that if I had not smoked the Don Carlos, then that absolutely would have been on there, and I feel fortunate to have been able to smoke that. Lucky me, but yeah,
Lucky you.
Yeah, no, looking back on it, it's like because I guess when they gave me the cigar, I was like, oh, I'm guessing that they're just gonna like, not everyone's gonna get them, but like they're going to be decently distributed, one of the things you find out.
Why would you think that with Fuente, though? Because
like there have been years. Remember when? Not the year when we got yelled at for Casa Cuba, but the next year when they started, like when they wanted to talk about Casa Cuba.
Right.
There were a lot of Casa Cuba samples available
Sure.
at that show, And so I figured that, like, because it's not like I got any of the samples of any of the other cigars. So I figured, like, oh, if they're going to give samples, sorry, it sounds like a complete Ashholes comment, but I promise you it's not meant to be that way. I just figured, because sometimes Fuente, it's entirely closed off. And then if it's not entirely closed off, usually they're wanting to promote it. And again, the Casa Cuba example is the one I would use of, like, but I guess I have to remember that they, like Padron, Fuente has all of these samples. I would be curious to know. I should talk to the reps. I wonder if the reps got to smoke it.
I would be curious to see how many.
Sorry, I
people
never finished the Padron thought. Like Padron, Fuente has these samples on hand. Like they're at the show and they just choose not to give them out, which is interesting.
They bring them and they don't give them out.
Well, just like how lucky are you? Like how well have you built?
I'm not very lucky at all.
Well, no, but
apparently.
Like, but think about it from a cigar company perspective. You have all these other cigar companies that are like begging people to light up these cigars in hopes that they can open up a new account. And here's Fuente, who did not have the no new account sign, so hope there. But here's Fuente, who like brings samples of their new products to the show and then just like won't acknowledge those requests for them. But yeah. Anyways, the cigar I'm most curious about is this, at least amongst the ones I know of at this point, the Plasencia Almo del Cielo. So I think however it's pronounced. So the story behind this is that it is grown on a farm that I believe belonged to Nestor Andres' mother or grandmother. It's the highest altitude farm that they own. I'm not going to ask Brooks for the exact altitude because at dinner we got like 6,000 meters, which...
No. That was another one.
My bad.
That was another cigar.
We're not going to do the math here.
But
it's
I haven't
high
read
up.
that post yet, so I don't know right off the top of my head.
It's high up, that they say that because of how high up it is, it changes the climate. It's a lot cooler, and the altitude obviously plays a big role. Did you get a sample of this, out of curiosity?
I did, yes. I did get one sample of this and a very nice lighter as well.
Saw the lighter. Did not see the cigar. Did you smoke the cigar by any
I
chance?
have not smoked it. You can smoke it if you
No.
want.
I mean, whenever it comes out, I'm sure I will smoke it. But yeah, I'm curious about it. Like the Fuente, sort of the through line here is that like these are two cigars where the process of making the cigar is very different, and that always intrigues me. And so that's why it's on here. All right. What is the new cigar accessory that you were most interested in trying, Brooks?
So for me, it is the Cigar Medics El Maestro. Il Maestro. Don't we say Il? Il Maestro. This is the follow-up to, or brother, sister, whatever, to the Dunbarton cutter that Luigi, the designer and owner of Cigar Medics, made for Steve Saka. And I'm interested to see what the differences are between this and the Dunbarton version. Very interested, in fact. It's a little bit smaller. It works a little bit differently. It's definitely
how does it work a little differently?
Well, he says that the locking mechanism is different in terms of how it locks and how the cutter actually closes. And,
yes, but
and that kind of thing.
To be clear, the cutter still works the same. You put the cigar in, you press down on it.
Well, pretty much any cutter works.
Well, yes, but that cutter is
the same. Yes, in most aspects, it's the same. Yes, but I had been playing around with the Dunbarton cutter for a while and wanted to see how it compared.
If the bodies were the same, right? Do you think you'd be able to tell the difference between the two?
I think it feels very different when you.
Well, I guess my point is like if I swapped that cutter out with the Dunbarton one and it just looked identical and
if you
felt
swap
identical.
this specific cutter out and they had the same exterior.
No, I like took it off your desk and just replaced it with a cutter that looked identical, but obviously internally was slightly different.
It is about a little bit shorter, so yes, I think you could tell the difference.
So for me, the giveaway is the opening and closing is not as much fun to play with as the
Correct.
Dunbarton.
But I think
the Dunbarton has what, magnets in it?
Magnet.
Yeah, and so it's a lot more.
But this one seems to be closed quite a bit more securely as well.
I agree with you. It doesn't feel like it's going to open, but the Dunbarton just kind of like flings up it a little bit more, not any faster maybe, but with more force.
It's definitely nicer to play with.
Yeah. All right. Mine is also from Cigar Medics. Brooks, our not award-winning photographer, forgot to take a picture of this thing.
I did. Now hold on a second. I did not forget to take a picture of it. By the time I got there, he had sold it, and it was no longer in the booth.
When I was at the booth, it was there.
Then you should have taken a picture.
Wasn't my booth to cover.
I had no idea that was going to happen.
I didn't want to encroach on your photography as you try to figure it out over there. Anyways, I'm curious to try this because
I was like, "Where's it at?" He's like, "I sold it."
I guess we could have bought a draw machine, like a draw master, but it's never really crossed. I shouldn't say that. It has crossed my mind, but never seriously. This is about as close as I've gotten to thinking, like, I wonder if we do it. As many of you know, we weigh and measure all the cigars that we review now. And I'm curious, I don't think we're going to put every single one of them through the draw master because logistically that would be very tough, especially for Patrick, where, like, we'd have to get him one too. Because you need to cut the cigars to put them inside of the draw machine. And so what the draw machine does, for those of you that are unfamiliar with this, this is a newer version or a new version of one. But there's a company called Drawmaster that sells ones that are found in cigar factories all over the world, including in Cuba. And you put the cigar in where that black tube is. They look, to be clear, they look very different than this one. This one is made to be a lot smaller and I think more affordable, but to accomplish the same task. So you put the cigar in, and it's got a compressor. It sucks air through the cigar, and then it gives you a reading on. You can see there's a very large gauge there that tells you the resistance. And the idea being that you can establish sort of an ideal range for a ring gauge. And that will tell you whether or not the cigar has been rolled too tight or too loose. What I'm curious to see is what happens if we internally measure the cigars in the Drawmaster and then determine and then smoke the cigars and figure out whether or not the draws correspond with those readings. I suspect my sort of thesis is that it probably will, like 60 or 70% of the time, but that we are going to find that there are other issues that contribute to the draw just beyond what can be measured by a draw machine. I personally subscribe to the school of thought that the draw machines are not that great, not because that they don't work, but because factories don't really use them all that well. And the example I always explain to people is that every time I go into a cigar factory and God forbid, I see anyone using them, all they're doing is just putting the cigars in and hitting the button, and they're not paying attention to the readout. And then, you know, some woman with a very nice looking ass walks by the 19-year-old guy that's getting paid to work the draw machine, and he is completely distracted and is not going to look at the draw machine readouts. And so there are factories. Perdomo, I think, is probably the most famous, that draw tests every single cigar. And there are factories like Drew Estate that has never draw tested a cigar. And I can't sit here and tell you that I honestly notice the difference between those that do and those that don't. So I am curious to play around with this one. And I think we'll probably spend it. I think I have a rough idea of the price, but there was no MSRP because it's a factory option. Anyway, Brooks, your favorite non-cigar item that you saw? Do you remember what you answered?
I forget what I said.
Crux's screen, which you
screen.
can't really see in this picture
Yes.
from the award-winning photographer.
I've won many awards, just not for cigar.
Did you take a picture beyond this one of the golf thing?
The golf thing on the bottom right here?
Yeah.
Yes. One of the people was playing with it.
Is it in the booth post? We published this booth?
We published a booth. It is not in the booth post. It was the first post that went up. I mean, they have it. The cool thing about this huge screen is that they were playing multiple things on, including the Masters for a short time, and because it was over the weekend was over the Masters, and it was very impressive. I told them it needed to be a little bit higher so you could see over it just a little bit more. I thought, but it was very, very impressive, and I'm surprised no other booth had actually come up with that idea in the past, at least not to that extent, because I don't think I've ever seen one that big.
Well, I think the one in the Oliva booth was dramatically larger.
I did not see the Oliva.
And curved.
I did not see the Oliva booth because I was not.
Insert jokes there, chat. And there was two of them.
They will have more money than Crux, I imagine.
Probably. The Oliva booth one was interesting because there.
Was it on this ground or was it up? It was up.
No, it was on the ground. Like it was. You can read the Oliva booth post and see it.
I will do that.
But the
on
interesting
halfwheel.com.
part about it is that I don't think there was an angle where you could see the entire screen because it's curved. It was a circle, essentially, or like 40% of a circle. Anyways, yeah, no, the Crux booth, booth won an award.
Yes, they got the award.
I don't... So before the show started, I don't think we were breaking any trust here. Casey from Crux told us that this was going to be the last year of this booth. Is this the booth that they've been using for the last couple of years?
This is new.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember what the previous Crux booth looks like, and this didn't look anything like it.
Yeah.
But you were there for the conversation where he said this is the last time we're using this booth, right?
I was there, and that's what he said, yes.
And he made it sound like they'd used the booth multiple times before.
Maybe they use it in another show.
Not
Another,
TPE.
another. We didn't cover the booth in 2024.
Well, that's why I'm asking you if this was the same booth as last year.
That I don't honestly remember. I think I would remember that. So no, I don't believe it is. But the interesting thing is, I wonder if because they won this, I wonder if they're going to keep it or not, or maybe they were changing other things and keeping that.
Yeah, the whole conversation about them replacing the booth this year was quite strange. I'm curious to know which Crux employee's house that screen ends up at. Anyways, for me, it was the espresso machine and the Davidoff booth. There are lots and lots of companies that will offer you coffee or an espresso, or they'll offer you espresso for the most part by name. But it is, in fact, an espresso. Half Wheels booth had an espresso machine. And espresso is great for trade shows like this because it's consistent. It's very easy to use the machine despite the 5 of us butchering it quite frequently. And it's super portable. But it's not espresso. And as someone who had an espresso machine here at the office and eventually said, I'm done with this because there are limits to sort of how great that coffee can taste. It was nice to see an actual espresso machine. I was told when I was by a Davidoff employee whose voice you've heard a lot this week because I believe he voiced the Zeno Nicaragua ads. I was told this is going to be the best coffee you've ever had in your life. And I was like, sir, I do not think that is going to be what happens next. It was not, but it was the best coffee I had on the trade show floor by a mile. And Brooks is looking at it now like, man, they had Hershey's syrup.
Yeah, man, I wish I would have gone there. I would have absolutely. What about the Fuente? They were making espresso, weren't they?
K-cups.
Sad to see.
If we ever sell Half Wheel and are forced to show up at the trade show, I think I'll just bring the espresso machine and
just make espressos.
Just it'd be like an invite only to be like, hey guys, just so you know, we're not going to be here anymore, and our office is going to be shut down. But just so you know, this is what it should taste like.
Charlie has a very expensive espresso machine here in the office.
It makes great espresso. I mean, in the context of espresso machines, it's not that expensive.
It takes like 10 minutes to make a friggin' shot.
It does not.
It's a long time.
It takes like, I mean, from the moment the machine is warmed up, it does not take very long. And again, as I told you, like the other big advantage to that machine, it is a Decent, for those of you that are wondering, is that...
Decent machine?
No, the brand is called Decent.
Oh.
Is that the machine, unlike most espresso machines, does not take very long to heat up, which is a big thing. Anyways.
I won't go anywhere near it because I'm afraid of breaking it if I breathe on it. So.
That's probably possible. Anyways, so that was the coolest thing. And Brooks, I have a concerning reality here.
Uh-oh.
We both have the same answer for this question,
This
which
is
was...
not surprising to me.
What was the most interesting new booth you saw? And it was Mayflower Cigars. We did not do the Brian Burt booth walk-around videos this year, and I regret not having them for certain booths. And I think there is a way to do this better going forward where we're not making him walk around the Fuente booth for the 25th time. That hasn't changed. But like a video here would have been very helpful. It looked like they went to the ARC exhibit, which I've never been to, in Kentucky. Is that where that ARC museum thing is?
Yes.
It looks like they went there and they stole part of the ARC. It looked like it was the internal parts of a ship were set up, and you can obviously see some other. Yes.
ARC?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's not a Mayflower exhibit in Kentucky, to my knowledge.
Right.
If we sell Half Wheel, that's what we should do. We should buy some land next to the ARC exhibit and make the Mayflower and just make it seem way larger than than Noah's Ark.
Not to scale.
Happy Holy Week, everyone. All right. Before we get to the predictions, Brooks,
Yes.
just some broad thoughts. I'm going to ask you some questions that I haven't thought of yet.
Okay.
And so I'm going to vamp for like 15 more seconds.
Then let's do it.
And about the show, and then we'll move on to the predictions, scoring, and then if you have any questions, I've seen some in the chat. We'll answer them at the end. All right. So broadly speaking, you were someone that was very not pro New Orleans, maybe not anti New Orleans, but not pro New Orleans. You had always talked about how New Orleans in August is what you said, but I think what you actually meant was July is hell.
And either one, typically.
And the first thing that I noticed when I got to New Orleans after like walking out of the airport was, holy shit, the weather is awesome.
Yeah.
And I looked at the weather before and had seen that the weather looked like it was going to be awesome, which in my book is high 70s. I think it creeped in the 80s a couple times, and the lows were in the mid 50s. The entire time we were there, there was not a drop of rain to my knowledge. It was awesome. So your thoughts on New Orleans as the host? We're going to be there again next year. Then we're back to Vegas for 2 years, and then apparently back in New Orleans in 2029.
My thoughts are
assuming again that no one comes and buys half wheel between now and then.
When's the next? When's the time for the next one?
Same date? Basically the same. Yeah, it's, I think a week.
I think we got lucky. I think it's possible that that it could be a lot warmer, but it was gorgeous. There's no doubt about that. New Orleans is one of my favorite cities in the world. When it's not, when it's not August or July or June or, any 6 months basically in the summer, give or take. But this was really, really gorgeous. And I kept hearing from, everybody that said, I was very skeptical of New Orleans in general because of the smoking ban and that kind of thing. But it turned out very, very well. And I was very impressed with how things went in general from what I saw. I'm happy to go back, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that it would have been very different had it been raining, especially if it was raining like Friday and Saturday. I think that would have dramatically altered the mood because, as Brooks alluded to, this is the 10th anniversary of the passage of the New Orleans smoking ban is actually this week, ironically enough. And we can smoke on the convention center floor, but you cannot smoke in bars and restaurants in New Orleans unless they are specifically cigar bars. And there are a handful of them. They're not that large, though, and they certainly aren't willing to accommodate. The PCA says that there were just under 6,000 people were registered to attend the show. Let's say that 4,500 of them actually showed up. I have no idea what the actual math is, but this city can't accommodate an additional 3,000 cigar smokers inside. So if it was raining, there probably would have been some more complaints. But I mean, like the hotel that we were staying at, they set up some tables on the outside, and they were willing to leave the bar open later, so that way people could have drinks. And the security staff was super nice. I'm not an expert on New Orleans, but I've always contended that I believe, like San Francisco, is one of America's greatest food cities. And I think I wrote this previously on the site, but like New York and Los Angeles kind of have to get excluded, I think, in comparison because of how much larger they are. But pound for pound, I don't think that America has a greater city than New Orleans. The people are awesome. There is a distinct culture in New Orleans that's not like monolithic. There are multiple cultures there. One of the things we saw, we were walking around on Thursday. We were walking through a neighborhood that clearly had a bunch of older Asian influence from like the early 20th century, late 19th century. And I think that gets, like I certainly, not my people in terms of the part of Asia they're coming from. But, like Viet Cajun is a thing. And that's a more modern thing, but they're, New Orleans has a long history with lots of different cultures, and the melting pot there is so unique. And I mean, the food and the music are obviously, on a different level.
It's just a massive difference between that and Vegas in terms of just about every metric you want to hit. And I enjoyed it immensely. Like I said, I have no problem going back. There is a possibility, I imagine, that it's going to be warmer and more problematic or raining, like you said. But it's just being able to be outside so much, being able to I mean, Vegas is great, but smoking inside all the time gets annoying to me. And I loved it. I was very impressed. Hotel wasn't as bad either as I thought it would be.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're trying to spend a ton of wake hours in the hotel room. So, to your point about the weather, like the weather in Dallas this week has been pretty good.
Yeah, it was
not
better.
Great,
it was better weather there than here in Dallas.
But like, if you move that weather to Dallas, I mean, we're about to get some big storms tomorrow. But like, I'm looking at our weather thing up here. The high is an 88. Like, just that alone, I think would tamper some of the mood of New Orleans. But I'm glad that we got an awesome, like, could not ask for a better week weather-wise, and we had some fantastic meals.
We did, and thanks to you.
We had some fantastic meals, and we had a brunch on Friday as well.
Due to all of the research you did.
Sorry. So that was New Orleans. Before we move on to the prediction stuff, do you think that that is going to happen. Like, do you think the mood is going to be the same next year, or do you think that people are going to, for whatever reason, whether it's the, obviously this week we sort of had the distraction of the tariffs leading into this, but this industry is one that really likes to complain about things. It's very much a glass half empty and let me yell about it. Do you think that the good vibes will continue, especially considering that I don't think there were overwhelmingly positive vibes. I think it kind of neutral vibes heading into this, but I think the general take was most people would rather be back at the Venetian in Las Vegas.
I think that the advantages, as long as the weather, I think the advantages are good enough that people will be very happy to go back, just like me. I think most people will. I was very, very surprised at how much I enjoyed it in terms of everything, not just being outside and being able to smoke outside and that kind of thing. I enjoyed it immensely, and I think most people will be the same who actually went, and they'll be more than happy to go back. I think Vegas is a better choice, just because of any number of situations that we probably don't need to talk about. But I think that as if they have to go to somewhere in America at that time of year, I think New Orleans is probably going to be a great choice going forward too.
If you had to rank it, though, let's say Vegas in the Venetian, which is not where we're going to be in 2027, 2028. Vegas in the Las Vegas Convention Center, which is where we will be in 2027 and 28, where we were last year. Or the New Orleans Convention Center, and we'll just say it's April for all of these. Where would you rank them? So LVCC, Venetian, New Orleans.
I prefer the Venetian over just about anything. I would take New Orleans. I would take New Orleans over the Las Vegas Convention Center, if only because we can go out and get better food.
We
the sandwiches from
but there's great food. The offsite food is the lunch we had that was bringing in food from outside, but we don't do that in Vegas. I guess we could. I will say this: I agree with your general sentiments about the difference in how Vegas feels versus how New Orleans feels. I will say that one thing we internally, or we at Halfwheel, have done is made some deliberate attempts to not eat every meal at the casinos. And so we spent a lot of time eating in Chinatown and even, further out than that. And I think, not every meal we eat is outside the casinos. And there are some awesome restaurants inside. Pick your casino choice. But we have found that I think we like getting in the car and going outside and not having, a caviar and truffle flight sold to us while trying to order cheeseburgers. And so I'm curious. I think that the move, if you're going to use New Orleans, is that it needs to be as an alternate. It cannot be we're going to sign a 5-year deal to be in New Orleans like they did at the Venetian. I think that would go poorly, I think.
Yeah, Vegas.
As much as I like New Orleans.
Vegas is built for this kind of thing, and there's just so many options. And you don't spend long in the room, but the rooms in the Venetian, for example, are just insane. And I just feel like that it's a better place overall for these kind of situations. But as a 1-off, 2-off, I guess at this point, yeah, 100%. As long as it's in the same time frame.
One last question before we get to the prediction stuff. Putting aside the New Orleans, Vegas geography of it all, what do you think was the biggest difference between this trade show and last year's show? And so I guess more like thinking about the floor, and I guess your answer is going to be, well, it was really wide.
It was really wide.
But putting aside that, did you find that there were any noticeable differences between how the floor felt, or the types of products, or the types of people?
I continuously thought to myself that the aisles seemed to be thinner.
They were.
And thinner than I'm used to on just about anywhere. Yes. I was having to move around people and bumped into a couple of people every once in a while because I'm, me. But I thought that was very obvious to me that it was very noticeable. So that's something that I would definitely like to have changed.
Yeah, I would say that there certainly on the retailer dynamics, right? We heard from at least the companies I asked a lot, predictably, a lot fewer West Coast retailers, a lot more from the Southeast. I think Texas and the Northeast and the Midwest kind of all remain the same. But my understanding is that, if you're a rep that's covering Georgia, Mississippi, the Carolinas, you saw an uptick in clients. And then I would say from the Halfwheel perspective, and I thought that this would be the case last year in particular, I thought there was a lot more new products on the cigar side this year than there were last year. And I think that's very much due to the fact that last year's show was in March. And if you're making cigars and trying to make new cigars, March is tough because the factory shut down for an extended period of time in between December and January for the Christmas and New Year holidays. And if you're going to try to put something new in production, that means then you need to turn around and get back to the factory just as it opens. But the big issue is packaging, as it always is, especially with new cigars. And that gets complicated because not only do you have to worry about the fact that it's not like you can go to the cigar factory and really do much work in those weeks around Christmas and New Year's, but also you have to contend with Chinese New Year. If any of the packaging is coming from China, Chinese New Year shuts down the country's manufacturing. And so it means that the stuff needs to be on the boat before Chinese New Year starts, which gives you a very, very small window to get this stuff into production. And I felt like last year with the March dates, and we're going to have some March dates in 2027 and 28, I think it just means that, I sort of said heading into last year's show, if the product's not done by December of 23, there's a very good chance it's not going to show up at the trade show. Whereas I think if you have the April dates, I think you have a little bit of flexibility to be working on that stuff in January. And so it's no surprise to me that we saw a lot more new cigars, at least I think, shown off at this year's show than we did last year. And I suspect the numbers will very much bear that out.
Let me ask you a really quick question. I know we're running long here, but let me ask you a quick question. I was surprised at the number of people who did not ask or say anything about the tariffs.
Yeah.
Did you feel the same? I felt like that it wasn't even a thing that people were even talking about for the most part, unless you actually asked them specifically. And I thought there would be a lot of people standing around talking about it and, whatever. And it just didn't seem to be the case to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's not surprising, I guess. I think that I could have seen it going either way, right? Here's the deal with the tariffs. First of all, in case you were unaware, it's very up in the air about what any of this is going to be. Brooks and I were having lunch on Wednesday, and right as last Wednesday, not the Wednesday of 2 days ago, but 10 days ago. And that was right when the announcement was being made that the tariffs were being suspended, which for manufacturers in Honduras and the Dominican Republic didn't make a difference. But if you were in Nicaragua, all of a sudden your tariff went from 19% to 10%. Second, and it's a 90-day suspension, but I don't think anyone's confident as to what the world looks like in the form of tariffs in 80 days from now. Secondly, I think that there was an insane amount of misinformation by a minority of people on the internet and the cigar internet world about how impactful the tariffs are going to be. They are not on the wholesale price of cigars. They are on the import price of cigars. We have the data from the CAA, which you can choose to not believe and just go off of vibes, or you can believe the data that the CAA publishes, since they're the only ones, to my knowledge, that make any attempt at getting this data. And the data tells you that the average import price for these countries is less than $2 a cigar. And so if it's a 10% tariff on $1.77, which I don't remember if that's the average Nicaraguan import or the average Dominican import, that is the import price, the price of the tariff supply to, then you're talking about adding 17 cents on average to these cigars.
17.7?
Yeah, sure. And so it's not, and yes, it will get doubled by the retailers who don't really mind all that much, because they're probably thinking to themselves, you know what, if it's 20 cents a cigar, which is going to be less than that for most cigars because it is the average price, not the median price, whatever. But if it's 20 cents a cigar, that then on the wholesale end, and they double it to 40 cents a cigar, I don't know how many people this honestly affects, where they're walking to a brick and mortar store and they're willing to buy a cigar at $10, but they're not willing to buy the cigar at $10.40. And so, if that's a problem, which it is for some people, that the cigar companies are going to steamroll through that anyway, because they're doing 5% price increases almost year in, year out. And as you're very well aware, the cost of new cigars, there's not a lot of new cigars being introduced at $7.
Sadly, that's true.
We were doing a bit about how affordable a $13 cigar was a second ago. And so I think for the most part, the cigar companies and the retailers are just going to have to pay it. And I think, if anything, the cigar companies are probably more annoyed by the paperwork and the lack of instructions and the lack of predictability than they are about the actual tariff, because they're not going to pay it for the most part. I think we have a survey. It's the survey responses are sitting over there. And so next week we'll publish the results. We surveyed the exhibitors. I don't know how many responses we got. I was pretty bad on one of the days about giving out the surveys. But we surveyed the exhibitors and we asked them questions about tariffs, like, are you going to increase prices? Or if the tariffs stick around? Are you going to adjust your product mix? Which I actually think is an important thing to understand. There are going to be some cigars that get discontinued because of the tariffs. And somebody alluded in the chat, the accessory companies, it's a very, very different conversation. But I was not as surprised. And the final part I'll say as to why I wasn't all that surprised is because when the FDA shit was going down, they were only really caught up in it in 2016 when shit was hitting the fan. Before that and after that, it didn't seem like very many people other than, me and select others really cared all that much about FDA when it came to the trade show. And in fact, if you go back and look at trade show recaps from years past, there's constant references to like, oh, these people don't seem very concerned about FDA. And in the end, it, for the most part, worked out better than expected for them. But yeah, I don't think they're all that caught up. It is interesting to think that how many conversations I have about user fees, which are less than or were less than what the tariffs are likely going to be. They were very upset about the user fees, but not as much about the tariffs. That's probably an editorial for a different day. All right.
Indeed.
Now that I've talked for a long time. A couple weeks ago, we had a show where Brooks and I were asked, I guess, 21 questions, 22 answers to make predictions about the upcoming trade show. They ranged from questions about what was going to be the most expensive new cigar and how much it was going to cost, to how many companies were going to pack up their booths early, to whether or not Brizard and Company was going to call Brian Burt by the name of Brooks Whittington. And we made some predictions, and the agreement, well, the prize, I guess, there was never really an agreement here. But the loser of this has to review the next 7x70 cigar. I have looked at some of the answers. I have not tabulated them yet. I have the sheet I filled out from 2 weeks ago where I put what Brooks and I said to various things. So now we are going to tabulate it. There are a couple of things here where we may need to discuss to confirm that the correct answer is the correct answer. So we're going to go through these and figure out which one of us has to smoke a 7x70. Now, if we tie, do we both have to do it? I think that's got to be the only answer.
That doesn't make any sense. We have to both review it?
No. Well, we could review different 7x70s.
Yes.
All right.
I would say none.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear here, it's not that like we hate 7x70s. Just reviewing cigars is reviewing cigars. The problem is they take a ton of time to smoke, which is annoying if you're a cigar reviewer because it means that you have fewer hours in the day that you can do other things, like make espresso. So, question number one. Again, that was the rules. Here we are, April 18th. Let's get going. So, question number one was how many companies will introduce a PCA branded cigar? As you can see, Brooks said 6. I said 5. To be clear, each day at the end of the trade show, all 4 of our writers, so the 2 of us as well as Brian Burt and Patrick Reed, were asked to identify questions like this, like, hey, did you see a PCA branded cigar? And so based on the responses from the surveys, as well as the news stories that we wrote prior to the show, my understanding is that there are 5. And these are the 5. Brooks.
Please, somebody tell me there's another one.
Did you see another one?
I did not.
All right.
I didn't see any of those because they weren't on my list. So
yes. So we're going to count that for Charlie.
Ugh.
Now, if somebody goes in the chat and is like, oh, yeah, there was this, or like, we need to be able to move on from this, right? So, like,
we had to see it.
Yeah. Well, no. I'm saying, like, if 10 minutes from now someone's like, oh, there's actually another thing for question number 3.
It depends on if it's my win or yours. Though.
Got it. All right. Good news here. Neither one of us won this. We asked how many new Calibras will be on display. And this is interesting because a lot of these other questions were, like Dan Reeves just said, we had a PCA cigar.
We moved on, sadly.
I guess Patrick didn't mention it in the Taiwan post. Or in that post hasn't gone up yet, but the surveys. Anyways.
Dan, that would have been helpful about 2 minutes ago.
So we asked, from a lot of these other questions, we asked how many companies. This was how many new Calibras, not companies. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't have mattered because we were wrong either way. To my knowledge, there was just one new company or one company that had Claybers on display, or new Claybers on display, and there were 6 of them. Forge Cigar Company, Room 101, Matt Booth. This is a humidor that was very impressive in person from N Solo Designs. It celebrates, it's got various Room 101 anniversary releases inside of it, and there are new Claybers for each one of the Room 101 anniversary blends. So that would be a 0 for both of us.
Indeed.
Number 3, does Espinosa have a Las 7 Siete Provincias on display? And the answer to that was no, though I'm told that there might be something next year. But that would be a no, and that would be a win.
Wow.
For Brooks Whittington.
That doesn't happen very often.
It's going to happen a lot more than I'd like it to in a second. Number 4, how many different accessory companies does a company put into one lighter cutter combination? Brooks said 7. I said 8. You covered the Vissel booth, and I believe we were both very, very wrong because as far as I read on the Vissel booth, the number that we could come up with the most was 4. Anything else you saw that would have qualified for this?
As far as I know.
Yeah, and I wasn't counting things like the fuel window or the flame adjuster. It needed to be like, I think the one that won was like a cigar stand, a punch, a draw poker, and the lighter.
Right.
All right. Number 5, how many companies will have products on display that were at previous PCA trade shows and have still not shipped? Brooks said 9. I said 4. Again, this was companies, not products. If it was products, you would have had a shot. But I believe it was 4. And these are the ones that I came up with. Oliva had a humidor that was at Intertabac, but not at PCA. And the question, as a refresher, was previous PCA trade show. And so I think that means that one. Patrick filled out a survey and said there was a Calibri product that just started shipping before the show that would have qualified for this.
I think I misunderstood the question, but
I
think I thought you said
the Leif and Lam one is interesting because the product got an additional letters added to its name in between now and then, and that was the lighter they never shipped last year.
Correct.
But if you look at pictures of it, it looks identical from the lighter they showed off this year. So
it is as far as I know, it's the same lighter. It's just rebranded.
Got it. All right. So that would be one more for me. Number 6, how many companies will announce new $100 plus cigars? Brooks said 2. I said 4. I don't remember if either one of us won. Oh, look at that.
Oh, you don't
I don't really remember. I was scrambling to put this together. So CLE had 2, but the question was, as a refresher, companies, not new $100 plus cigars. CLE had 2. They had the Asylum 13 by 134 cigar that's going to become relevant in a bit, as well as the Aroa Aviator series. El Septimo had their Grand Reserva, which is $125. Ellie Blue has the Fuente that we'll talk about in a second, and the Humidor that was $291, if I'm not mistaken. And Hierman Solomon has a $2,000 10-count box that comes with a cigar knife. So that definitely qualifies for this as well. Fuente had the... I guess like this is one that we need to talk about. Fuente had what appears to be the Churchill Opus X 25th, but I'm still waiting on confirmation that it is in fact that size and the box counts. I believe regardless it's going to be a $100 plus cigar, but if it's the Churchill, it already shipped however many years ago, and so that would not be new.
Well, then.
Yeah, and Jay Davis points out here that the Opus X Society cigar has no official MSRP. Brooks and I had a conversation about that. That does not qualify because there is no MSRP, but I do think it's going to cost more than $100. Although I have no idea because I didn't even have that conversation with them this year. At least not yet. So we're going to count that for Charlie. All right. Number 7 was the 2-parter. So it was blank company will have the most expensive new cigar at PCA 2025. It will cost blank. And Brooks, you said El Septimo at $150, and I said Gurkha at $500. This was the one where we got a range. Now the good news is that we don't have to do the math because neither one of us were close. As far as I know, it is that Ellie Blue that came in the humidor, which worked out to be $291. Brooks and I had a conversation about an hour ago about this because certainly not all of the $17,500 you are paying for is for the cigars. You are paying in part for the humidor, but given that you cannot buy the humidor separate from the cigars or the cigars separate from the humidor, this is sort of how we do the accounting, and that's that. So that would be a 0 for either one of us. Number 8 was what's the length of the longest new cigar introduced at PCA 2025? And I nailed that one.
Oh, my God.
This show was done before that cigar was announced, which is even more startling. And number 9, corresponding to that, was what's the ring gauge of the thickest new cigar introduced to PCA 2025? Brooks took 80, I took 90, and the answer was 134. Not close to either one of those. Number 10. This is one that we need to talk about. Will there be more jazz bands or mariachi bands on the show floor? Now, interestingly, I said that we needed to pick one or the other. We couldn't take both because one of the reasons I specifically said why we couldn't take both was that it meant that there could be none, and that was probably the most likely answer. And I believe I did not see a jazz band on the show floor or a mariachi band. Did you see either one?
I did not see a band of any sort on the floor.
I mean, Rocky Patel had singers in his booth.
Not jazz or
and you
mariachi.
saw the October London concert.
Yes. Is that jazz?
No, I think you would classify that as R&B.
Yeah.
And we also said there needed to be some uniforms,
yeah,
or some
it's
equipment.
not a band.
Yeah.
It was just a guy singing.
Yeah. So we're gonna go with 0 on the
I go with 0 on
bands. We also asked. Drew Estate traditionally does these gifts for retailers. Over the years, they have included things like skateboards, mini skateboards, paint cans, cigar molds, and a bunch of other hard hats, shoes of all sorts of kinds. And we asked what this year's thing was. We both thought it would be something New Orleans themed, and we were very wrong. Brooks, what was it?
They had the wooden sculptures, I guess, of the Brooklyn Bridge, or a bridge. I assume it's Brooklyn, but it was. They're very nice, but not anything close to what we chose.
So that'd be a 0 for both of us. Number 12. How many booths will have vehicles that require a license plate? Brooks said 2. I said 4. My recollection is that it was only the Zeno Nicaragua trailer that occupied where the espresso machine was based. Now, the Grab a Leaf booth is like a shipping container, but I don't think that requires a license plate.
I don't know, but I can't imagine that it requires a license.
Well, you're
plate.
the one that took 2, so I'm not going to fight on this.
Okay.
It's going to be a 0.
I would say yes. They absolutely require license plates.
All right. Number 13. How many booths will have AI-made graphics? Now, this one, I specifically said that, as well as there's another one that I don't think I got any pictures for. This one was said we had to have pictures for it. So we're going to go through the pictures we have. We're going to make sure that we believe these to be AI-made graphics. That definitely... I don't know. I mean,
it's not a photograph of a horse.
Yeah, but I guess it doesn't stand out to me as like definitively AI, but I'll count it.
It depends on it. Okay.
This Epernay thing, I think is definitely made in AI, but if somebody drew that in Photoshop themselves, then I apologize. But it very much looks like there was some AI involved there.
It looks like it.
No questions here. That is AI. And welcome to not Cringeville, but what?
Kanger?
I don't know.
Kangerville?
Welcome to AI. I'm confused. I will say that there was one other booth that I should have taken. The Rotching Humidors definitely had some AI looking things, although not new. That's been part of their booth for a while. That would have been helpful to you had I taken that picture, apparently. Although, again, I don't know if the first one, if I feel like that was AI.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. So that would be a L for both of us. Don't worry, Brooks. You're about to go on a run. Will Steve Saka tell Brooks all of the details about Dunbarton's new products? Brooks said no. I said yes. I have no clue what I was thinking. He did not tell all of the details. He is in the chat, so maybe he'll dispute that for me in the next 5 seconds, though I have now marked that down as your second win of the day. Number 15, will Ellie Blue have all of the pricing details to Charlie by the time the April 18 live show starts? That would be a no. They told me they were coming, or the details were coming, and I have not gotten them yet. So that's 1 for each of us. Currently, score is 3 for Brooks and 5 for me.
Ha!
Number
I didn't
6.
lie to you. Look at that.
What? I didn't say you lied to me. I just said I didn't know what I was thinking. Those are 2 very different things. Number 16, when Brian Burt is covering the Brizard and Company booth, will he get referred to as Brooks? The answer to that was no, and so now it is 4-5.
Although somebody did call me Brian multiple times.
That was not the question. All right.
We look alike, so.
Number 17, how many booths will Half-Wheel cover at PCA 2025? I did my part to make sure that you had no shot at doing this because I did not cover a lot of booths. Brooks took a number that I did not think was possible.
I was really optimistic about our chances here.
My accounting of this is at 151. There are a handful of booths that are in a category on our project management software that I can't entirely figure out if we're actually going to cover. I don't think there's any chance we're getting to 160 though. But 151 would be if I had to guess right now, and that is neither 160 nor 172, so that would be an L for both of us. Number 18, will the PCA say retail attendance is up compared to 2024? We do have those numbers. I'm going to put them on the screen. And the answer is the PCA says that the retail attendance was up. Now, that was pretty predictable because they had said as much heading into the show. So that's a point for both of us. It is now 5-6. You remain trailing by 1.
Where's this?
What? Number 19, how many companies will have completely packed up their booths by 3 p.m. Monday? To my knowledge, I haven't gotten any pictures of any of this happening, and there were pictures required. We know of a couple, but
I did not get any pictures. I did not see anybody.
yeah, I was way too busy to be bothering with it. Cigar Medics, which got mentioned quite a bit earlier in the show, they were a company I know that said that they were getting packed up by noon.
They were absolutely packed up, but I didn't take a picture.
Regardless, we're not close to 3 or 4, so that's going to be L's for both of us. Number 20, who will something the comedy show is who will win the comedy show? It won't be Steve Saka. If you're wondering who the options were, not Steve Saka.
Steve Saka was not
I forget who they replaced him with.
there.
I saw they updated the graphic. Anyway, do you have any? I know the answer to this, Brooks. Would you like to take a guess as to who it was?
I mean, I think this is a subjective thing.
I mean, I have no idea who was judging. The answer of the comedy show stand-up winner, Nick Perdomo Jr. So Nick Perdomo.
Congratulations, Nick.
That would be an L for both of us. And finally, at number 21, blank will be the company that is most rumored to be bought or sold. Now, I think I know the answer to this, but Brooks, would you like to make a case that it was EP Carrillo, even though they changed their name to Costa Carrillo the week of the show?
Did not hear anything about anybody being rumored to be sold, so I can't tell you that.
My Saturday morning, I was walking to the first booth to go cover, and an employee from another company sees me walking by, and I'm like, hey, I got to walk all the way down here to this booth to go cover it, but like we can talk. He's like, I want to just chat with you about something. And he told me, he said, hey, have you heard any rumor about Altadas being sold? And I was like, oh, I guess we're doing this again. Because at Pro Cigar, I heard a rumor that Altadas was being sold to a Middle Eastern company. And I guess Friday night, that rumor was spreading around the French Quarter and various cigar bars. I did not hear anyone mention Davidoff being sold, but Saturday morning, I heard all about Altadas being sold. And I think that is, at least my answer would be Altadas. I didn't hear a single person mention EP Carrillo being sold.
I did not hear either one, so
okay.
I can't help you.
So we're going to go with Tabacalera USA / Altadas. And that means that I win. The final score here is 6-5. Brooks is going to have to smoke that 7x70.
It's like high school all over again, just losing all over the place.
Thank you for playing along. I was very concerned when there was that stretch of questions when it was like, oh, Brooks got that one right and that one right and that one right. And then Brooks was going to be the award-winning cigar trivia writer at Half-Wheel.
If only.
But he will not. All right. So with that out of the way, we are going to take some questions. So if you have them, ask away. We're going to get through them, and then we've got a lot of stuff to do. So We're not going to stick around forever here. Do. Someone asked, have accessory companies realized they are going bankrupt with tariffs like this? Brooks, I feel like you probably covered more accessory companies than I did, but
they are, the two that I talked to are Ween. They're just hoping that something happens, basically. Both of them have stock for about 3 months, give or take. So they say they're both going to. Both of them said they were going to just hang out and see what happens, which I feel is probably a pretty good thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I don't know what the answer is for the accessory companies. A lot of manufacturing, there's discussion about moving it from China to Vietnam. I don't know how realistic that is. I think that it's possible that some of it could get moved elsewhere, but that I think a lot of the core components are probably still going to have to be made in China. For example, my understanding is that almost every single double guillotine cutter is basically made at one factory, at least the blades are. And so you presumably you could make the blades at that factory and then ship the parts to Vietnam and have them assembled in Vietnam or some other country. But that's going to add a lot of costs to that. I suspect if the tariffs stick around, we're going to see some consolidation in the accessory business. I don't think we're going to see like all of these companies go out of business because there still is going to be a demand for it. But I do think that some of these players are probably going to have to exit the business. And unfortunately, there just is not a ton of alternatives. And I think this is part of the problem, many problems I have with sort of the tariff scheme. But this idea that like this lighter, interestingly enough, is a torch lighter that is not made in China. This lighter, it's a Blazer PB207. It is made in Japan, or at least that's what it says.
Is that a new one?
No.
The other one died.
Oh, yeah, this is a relatively new one. Yeah. Yeah, the sticker is not fringed up yet. But to my knowledge, like Blazer's the only one making, and Ellie Blue makes, or some of the Ellie Blue accessories are made in Japan. But outside of those two, I don't know of a single lighter that's made, a torch lighter that's made in Japan. Obviously, ST Dupont makes some of their high-end stuff in France, and they have talked about over the years about moving some of that production, the jet torch production, to France. But even then, you're like, is it going to be cheaper to make those lighters in China and pay the excessive tariff, or is it going to be cheaper to make them in France and pay a lot more in labor and materials and still pay a tariff, presumably? I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that if you're in the market for accessories, I would buy them soon, because I do think that if the tariffs stick around by the end of the year when this inventory is exhausted, it could be a real problem. Who was the surprise guest at the comedy show? I don't know.
I have no idea. Steve?
It was not Steve.
No, Steve, did he know?
Oh, Steve says, for the record, I told the organizer when I was invited, I expressly told I couldn't. They still included my name. No clue why. Saka asked how big of a topic the tariffs were with brand owners. We touched on that before Steve showed up. Next time, prioritize your afternoon to see this show as opposed to working. Scott asked, what trend did you see this year that surprised you, if any? I have one, Brooks. Do you?
Please, go ahead.
I saw a bunch of teal-colored things.
Teal.
Yeah, Ellie Blue had some new teal accessories. The Lullusion, the new group of 5 size, comes in teal foil. I feel like there was another one. It was interesting to see that like the teal Tiffany blue was kind of, if there was a color of the trade show, which I think is a very stupid idea. Was that Placencia? Like that teal color as well? I forget. No, that's more of a darker
blue.
It's more of a regular blue. Anyways.
Like a light blue.
I just remember at some
point
point
the sky.
Being like, oh, there's a lot of teal stuff going on here. I don't know. I mean, I know John McTavish is in here and was talking about, was it Mexican San Andreas or Cameroon? There was a bunch of new releases that were announced with that wrapper ahead of the show. I didn't feel like there was a distinct, like, wrapper or factory or size or, it's such a, when you're talking about 125, 130 plus cigar companies at least, I mean, I guess probably closer to 150. It's like you could take something like the 109 style caps, right? The Crux booth had the Marbleheads back, which is their sort of 109 style.
The branded Marblehead now.
Yeah. Theme. And then I know there was at least one in the Dunbarton booth that has a 109 style cap, but it's like, okay, we have two out of.
But the problem is, and this is really for us, internally, the issue for me is because of the way that we were covering things, I didn't see at least a third of the trade show floor. And so I couldn't tell you that there was, there's possible there was, 19 other 109 style caps that I would never have seen. So I can't help you there in terms of that.
Jay Davis says there was not a surprise guest for the comedy show. So
what a surprise.
Things were promised, and Eric Espinoza is the answer to that, is what should have happened. Alan Rubin asked, not the Alan Rubin, but another Alan Rubin, not the Alan Rubin from Alec Bradley, I should say. He is the Alec Rubin from his family. How did this year's show compare? Oh, it's just like, yeah, we got multiple people with the same name. How did this year's show compare to the 2015 one in New Orleans? Brooks, you were there.
Oh,
I
my
was there.
goodness gracious. Let me count the ways.
It's a lot more organized on our
But I'm
end.
not going to. It was better. Let's just put it that way. Better weather, seemed to be better organized to me from what I remember of the first show, New Orleans. It was just a better overall. It wasn't even comparable. And I was basing a lot of my concerns on that show, and I guess I shouldn't have. It was far and away a better show than 2015. It doesn't even compare in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think in that show, I haven't thought extensively about what the mood was there, but I do recall that there was that was very much a speed bump. Like there was an understanding that show was in New Orleans. That wasn't necessarily where anyone wanted that show to be. We were going to get back to Vegas, and we did. This year, did not have very many conversations with people about like, oh, I wish this was in Vegas. I definitely had some conversations with brand owners about the timing of the show. Obviously everyone tells you that this was the best show ever, and they're setting sales records and breaking sales records and all sorts of things. And some of that's probably true, and a lot of it is bullshit. But there were a couple of brand owners I distinctly remember that told me, hey, like, moving the dates of the trade show has made this trade show a lot less profitable and a lot less revenue generation because having the show in the summer in July or August, while it's hot outside, and Brooks likes to complain about that, the big advantage to doing that from a sales perspective is that you have some of these climates where the weather is just now turning to where cigar sales are slightly starting to pick up. And they'll continue to pick up. Father's Day is, I think, still the biggest weekend of cigar sales in the entire calendar. And so by May and June, like things will be great. Well, if you're having the trade show in July, what that means is that some of these retailers, and really all of them nationally, but especially the ones in the colder climates where the business is more seasonal than it may be here in Texas, they've had a few good months, consecutive good months to build up a bankroll to go spend money. Whereas right now, they don't necessarily have that. And so that is a consequence to the timing. I think that there are competing schools of thought about which one is better. I would probably lean towards having the show in the summer for that reason. I've subscribed to that theory for longer than a decade at this point, because I remember asking, similar to Brooks, hey, why do we have to do the trade show in these hot climates in July and August? And I was told to me that there was a couple of reasons why. But one of the benefits of doing it was, in fact, that they felt like it really helped the sales. And so that's one interesting tidbit here. And again, it wasn't a New Orleans complaint. That was a schedule complaint more than anything else. Steve Saka asked, were there many new cigar exhibitors? I think there were about the same as what there normally are. I think a common refrain that we hear at the end of these shows is, oh my God, I can't believe how many new companies there are. I didn't hear that as much this year. I also have stopped paying attention to that sort of comment because if you look at the numbers, the answer seemingly is basically the same every year. There's probably about 10 to 20 exhibitors that have never exhibited before, and amongst those, probably 2/3 of them are quote-unquote new companies that have been around for less than, let's call it, 2 years. most new cigar companies don't immediately exhibit it at the trade show because it's a very large expense. And in fact, I probably guess that most cigar companies that have debuted, I was having this conversation with John McTavish yesterday via text, actually, that most new cigar companies probably don't ever come to the trade show because there are a lot of cigar companies that exist where they sell cigars in their local city or they sell them in the state or the surrounding states. They're much more regional companies than these national companies are. And there's a lot of those companies that are successful. I'm sure, you and I hear about it all the time. We run into someone, they ask what we do, and you're like, oh, I work in the cigar industry. And they're like, oh, my cousin has a cigar company. And you're like, oh, what's it called? And they're like, they give you the name, and you're like, I've never heard of that. And I write about cigars 365 days a year for the last decade. And it's like, yeah, they sell cigars in Los Angeles. And that's the extent of it. And so those companies won't really ever make it to the trade show unless they decide they want a national presence. And I don't blame them. Like, I think that's probably not the best approach if you're going to be in that more regional space. But I don't think there was any sort of massive influx of new companies this year.
There were companies that I thought of, and I've mentioned this in one of my booth posts, that I thought of that smaller companies that have seemed to really, really take off in terms of trying to do better at the show, making a better booth, better, just a better overall feeling and presence at the show. And I thought that was interesting. Drunk Chicken had
but Drunk Chicken's been around for
significant
6 years?
3 years, 4 years at the show, I thought.
Well, but Drunk Chicken's been around for, they had their 5th
I thought we were
anniversary
talking about
cigar.
just when they, I thought,
No.
when they were just talking about when they came to the show.
No,
first.
I mean, I'm not trying to demean that, but
No.
they're not a new company. They're far from a new company as far as how we at halfwheel would consider a new company. All right. Alan Rubin, still not the Alec Bradley one. How many beignets did you eat in New Orleans? I did not have any. Brooks?
I had beignets every morning. Yeah.
Yeah, you had breakfast. How was that? Am I going to get receipts for that, or?
Yeah. I mean, it's on the bill, presumably.
Slavia, no?
It's on the bill. Yeah.
Thank God there's no one to audit us.
I enjoyed breakfast. Yeah, every morning. It's good stuff. I eat breakfast every morning. So Charlie.
So how many beignets did you eat?
So it's five every order. I eat 4-ish, 3 to 4. So over 5 days, so 20-ish, I guess. Over the, they're not real beignets. They were smaller, but they were, very good.
All right, we're gonna do the final question here. It is from Steve Saka. Do you guys think New Orleans or Las Vegas is a better hosting location? Steve, we already did this. I realize this is a knee-jerk snapshot, but just how on the fly do you feel personally? I think that hosting-wise, you very much alluded to it. I think Vegas is much more set up to host this because of the casinos and because you can smoke on the casino floors. There are casinos in New Orleans that you can't smoke on the casino floors, at least not at Harrah's. That in and of itself is it makes it better. I think that the rest of it, though, I prefer much of what New Orleans has to offer. And I'll say this, and it's interesting given the smoking ban that passed 10 years ago in New Orleans. New Orleans is much more interested in having our business than Las Vegas is. Las Vegas has way, way more clients and way bigger trade shows. And so for them, we are a small show. And for New Orleans, I think we're still probably a pretty small show. But the difference is New Orleans doesn't have as many shows. And so New Orleans, I think, very much values the business more. And I think, I don't know this for a fact, but Vegas, for those of you that are not familiar, Las Vegas is changing, especially the Strip, has changed a lot in the last decade. It is basically now controlled by 2 companies, and Vegas is going to keep changing, and probably not for the better in terms of the consumer experience for the most part. And so I don't think we've gotten the full-on corporate monopoly that we have in Las Vegas, especially when you're inside the casinos. We ate at a restaurant on Monday night that is part of a local restaurant group that has numerous restaurants. We ate at Pesh. They also have Cochon, which the butcher that was, I think, well frequented during the show. They have other restaurants as well. And I'm sure you have restaurant groups in Las Vegas that are like that, where they have 4 or 5 concepts throughout the city. But in Vegas, you are much more apt to see the just domination of these 2 companies. And when it comes to restaurants, you're much more apt to see, there's this restaurant that is famous in Paris, and so we're going to stick it in the Paris hotel. Or, Patrick, last time we were in Las Vegas for TP, Patrick wanted to go eat at Peter Luger's at Caesars. New Orleans isn't doing that. They're not bringing. There's a Shake Shack in the airport, but Shake Shack's a national chain at this point. But other than that, like you're seeing a lot more local flair, and I do think that, not to say that the people that work for those restaurants in Las Vegas are some sort of like less happy or less hospitable, but the vibe is a lot different, and New Orleans has that unique vibe that I don't think anywhere else in the city has, and I hope, for the love of God, that the corporations stay out.
Good luck. Look,
right.
in terms of do I get the answer?
Yeah, no.
Sorry.
No. You've said enough.
Here's the here's the thing. I love Vegas. I've been to Vegas, more than 20 times in my life. And that's not a brag, just a point. And it's a wonderful city. I love Vegas for any number of reasons. I think it's built for conventions. I think it's literally one of the best places you can go for a convention for any number of reasons. But I will say this: New Orleans has a better feel to it, as you mentioned, and also, every time I leave Vegas from one of these conventions, I am exhausted. The amount of noise and the amount of light and the amount of just everything is overwhelming to the senses. And I did not feel that leaving New Orleans. I felt better than I had in a long time leaving New Orleans.
Well, in fairness, you also managed to get on an earlier flight. So
I did,
those
but
endorphins
but I came in earlier too. Day earlier, I think. Regardless, I did not feel exhausted like I do when I leave Vegas, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact that you're just not overwhelmed with everything, all of the sounds and lights, and just all of the stuff that happens in Vegas. I feel like is really overwhelming to the senses. So I appreciated that quite a bit.
All right. So I appreciate you guys tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the show. It's going to be the last live show we do for a while, probably. This is not our medium. We do have a medium. It's the old school blog form. You can check it out at halfwheel.com, where there'll be plenty more coverage of the 2025 PCA Convention and Trade Show from both Brooks and I, as well as Brian Burt and Patrick LeGreed, the other two members that were on the show floor traveling booth to booth. I thank all of them for the work that they did. I don't know. We'll see. The accounting sort of says at the end of it, right? But I think Halfwheel's coverage of this trade show historically is more extensive, last year notwithstanding, than anywhere else you can see it. It's not to say it's the best. There's plenty of other places that do a great job of covering it. We have our own little unique hybrid, but again, we're shooting for something like 151 booths or companies that'll be covered at the show. And so, if you've not read, there's plenty of companies that we've not posted about yet that quite frankly, that I'm looking forward to reading about. And so those will be going up, a handful or two a day, hopefully more than one handful a day, for the next week and a half or so. Again, the contest, the Avo, Camacho, and Zeno contest, you have until Sunday night to leave your comments. All the details are on the site for those. And then the big Davidoff prize, the Winston Churchill Humidor with some Winston Churchill cigars. That contest ends a week from Sunday, so you have some time to leave comments on our booth post, and you could also just leave comments, not to try to win a contest, but I understand you are incentivized to do so. It's not some sort of grand mystery here. But I thank all of the team at Halfwheel. It's not just the four of us. We also had Kyle back, and he was a great help. He's staying in our office on the show floor and making sure that posts were going up, because God knows I wasn't doing that. I was mainly just deleting posts, it seemed like, throughout the week. And we also had Joe, who's based here in Dallas, right?
Correct.
Working remotely, editing photos. Joe tells me that he's done with all the photos.
He's very fast.
Faster than you, apparently.
Indeed.
So, with that said, final thanks to both Drew Estate and Davidoff, who spent some extra money, extra cash, to sponsor our coverage. It is not cheap to do the coverage that we do. We are very fortunate to be able to do it. It requires a pretty extensive budget, a budget that far exceeds the budget that Halfwheel had for its first year, or even two years of operation, probably. To give you an idea, we paid $8,000 to have internet for 4 days, essentially. It is not cheap to be able to cover the show live, and without the support from not just Davidoff and Drew Estate, but those two are the ones that are the sort of title sponsors. We would not be able to do it, and there are many of our advertisers that choose to advertise not necessarily because they feel like they're getting a great ROI on the ad spend, but because they want to support Halfwheel. They want to see this small sort of niche industry covered in the way that it is at Half Wheel, and I'm very, very appreciative of that because this is what we get to do for a living, and I don't take that for granted. And most importantly, thank you to everyone that is reading and commenting and watching these shows. If no one was watching or listening, we would not be doing, well, I guess if no one was listening, we'd probably still be doing these things. But if no one was reading the content on the blog, things would be a lot different. So without you guys, we wouldn't be able to make this whole thing work. And I hope you enjoy it. As we've sort of said from day one, you know, we want to be the cigar site that we would want to read, the cigar blog we'd want to read. And that includes the coverage that we do where, you know, we sort of give you an overly extensive take on how the trade show went. And so that way you guys can have some ideas to what cigars are coming to your local shop. So for Patrick Reed, Brian Burt, Kyle, Joe, who aren't physically here in this room, and Brooks Whittington, who's across the table, I thank you guys for tuning in. Enjoy this Zeno Nicaragua ad one more time. I mean, you're going to see it a lot more if you're on our YouTube channel, but you can see it one more. And we'll see you next time.
Zeno Nicaragua proudly sponsors Half Wheel's PCA 2025 coverage. Light, creamy with Nicaraguan pepper. Enjoy the best value in cigars today. Zeno Nicaragua.